It's going to be an interesting one.
Yep. Has raising kids become harder than ever before? Because apparently nearly 1 in 5 teachers in England say they've been hit by a pupil this year, as more children are on course to be suspended from school than ever before.
1 in 5 teachers in England say they've been hit by a pupil this year. I mean, that is crazy. That is crazy.
Who's to blame?
But why is that? And are our teens out of control? We've also had horror stories of stabbings.
Well, we had one this week, didn't we? The one in Wales this week.
Awful, awful. Are our teens out of control? Joining us now in the studio is parenting expert Pei-I Yang. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's get back to the basics. Are children getting naughtier?
Well, I don't think so.
No?
No, not at all. I think it's just the society is changing and their needs are changing and the people and the system around them are not changing fast enough to meet their needs. So I definitely don't think there are any naughty.
So what does that mean exactly?
So if you're thinking about, let's start with the society in terms of social media. Right now, they have so much access to the social media. They get to know about themselves, their rights, other young people, what they're doing. So now they have a voice and they feel more empowered to know about their rights and what they're entitled to. Back in my era, when I was a teenager, everything my parents or the teachers say goes, but now they have this...
Do you think that's a positive change, though?
I actually think it's a positive change, and I think it's to really think about what lens are you seeing through the teenagers' behaviour. And if you're thinking teenagers, if you're saying the teenage children's behaviour is getting naughtier, I think we're placing the blame on the teenagers, but the problem is...
Well, 1 in 5 kids have been found to hit a teacher, physically strike out.
1 in 5 teachers have been hit.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's no excuse because the world's changing around them.
Absolutely, there's no excuse, but we need to think about the organisational context and the pressure the teachers are going through, and also the curriculum, the teachers, when they went through the training, is there enough training, adequate training to teach them how to manage the difficulties, the changing needs of these children?
So are you blaming you're blaming the teachers for
I am not blaming the teachers.
In class?
No, I'm not blaming the teachers getting hit in class, Ben. What I'm saying, the teachers are under a lot of pressure. There's not enough support for them to support the changing needs of the children. I would imagine there'll be increasing pupils in class, right? And then the children, there are a lot of neurodivergent children. The needs are they know about what they are, who they are, what they want to become. But there's no curriculum for the teachers when they're going through training to say, right, these are the parts you need to think about. How do you meet these children's needs? How do you build a relationship with them?
I think that's true, but anecdotally, from my experience, I mean, we've all been children, it was my friends who had strong discipline from their parents who were actually happier because they had boundaries, they knew expectations, they knew that if they stuck by the rules, things would be OK. It's when parents take a completely lax approach that children get into trouble. Surely there needs to be more discipline rather than less.
I think we are going through one extreme to another extreme. It's a balance of needs, right? When I say the children's evolving needs are changing, it doesn't mean we don't put discipline in place. There needs to be boundary. Actually, the research has shown young people want boundaries and they need boundaries to feel safe because they're going through a lot of changes just now in physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. And it can be really overwhelming for them. So they need that boundary to feel safer for them. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of influences in the system around the young person that is changing the needs. So then we need to think about how do we influence the people around them to support the young people to thrive in the education system.
I think if I'm lucky enough to have a child, I think I'll probably be quite strict.
You have to be, but you also have to be...
I grew up with, I'm your mum, not your friend.
Well, I don't quite agree with that. I think you have to be strict, but also you have to be a loving parent as well. I mean, I'm the parent of 2 young boys, and I'm not going to name names, of course, but the kids whose parents are very slack and mollycoddle them and say, if they kick off and have a tantrum, they say, oh, no, come on, no, it's fine, no, come on, sweetheart, let's get in the car. Those kids behave the worst out of any other children I've met, and they continually do it because the kids know that the parents are lightweights and they get away with it.
Yeah, you do. You can be both, Ben. You can be a loving parent, but also putting boundaries in place. And I think a lot of parents think I have to be either or. If I have to be that strict parent, so then I can't give in to my children. And that's never the perspective I'll be encouraging my parents who I work with to think about. It can be both. You know, it's how you do it.
My 4-year-old refused to go to nursery for the first time ever. I was there last week or the week before, and we had this big sort of furore, and he was kicking and screaming. We tried physically putting him in the car, and he was just writhing around and, you know, being a nuisance. So I said, OK, don't go to nursery, but you're going to go home and you're going to sit in your room all day. We took away all his toys, no TV, no sweets, no chocolate, no treats, nothing. And for the whole day, of course we fed him, he came down for lunch and of course we did that. But the whole day, he was peering out his bedroom window, looking into the garden whilst I jet washed the patio. And do you know what he said the next day? He said, sorry, I regret doing that, I regret my behaviour, I'll go to nursery. And, you know, you've got to discipline kids. You just can't...
Did you use the word regret?
We had a chat and I said, how did that make you feel yesterday, all that commotion? And he said, I felt sad. I wish I didn't do it.
But can I ask, did you ask your wee boy why he didn't want to go to nursery?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, he says he doesn't. He said he didn't quite know. I think there's one of our friends worked at the nursery who just quit, and he was very close to her, so maybe it was because of that. But you
trials and tribulations.
You can't let kids get away with stuff like that because they'll just take an inch and go a mile.
Then you just highlight something so important here is the emotions I'm asking you about. I was asking you about why did your wee boy didn't want to go to school?
Yeah.
And it's the same for teenagers. There's a lot of feelings coming through, and it's that emotions you need to attend to be able to go, right, what's going on here? How are you feeling? And you will find that actually really reassure a lot of young people. And I think the teacher, because they're so stressed, there's so many kids in class, how do you manage 35 or 40 kids' emotions?
I want to go back to what you said at the start, because you talked about how it's potentially a good thing that children speak in terms of their rights.
Yeah.
And they talk about, just that point, really, because that's quite difficult, isn't it? Because children will come across sometimes as rather entitled, and they don't know more about the world than their parents, and they don't know what the right thing to do is in certain situations. Surely that guidance has to come from the parent rather than the child. The child should not be telling their parent what they should be doing.
Of course not. I'm not saying the parents listen to everything their children were saying or detect how the household should be like or how they behave in school. What I'm saying is the children now learn about how they feel, what their rights are, and they have a voice to talk about what can influence their life, affect their life. But that means the parents and the people around them learn to listen. But that doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but it's simply listening to what their perspectives are. And equally for the parents, you want your teenager to be listening to your perspective. Why am I putting the boundaries in place here? Why can't you go to party till 12 o'clock at night when you're only 13 years old, right? There's a different perspective here. It's about their listening.
Also, I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember who it was talking, a psychologist, I think, saying how social media is just making children and teenagers so anxious, so worried, depressed, and really causing a lot of disruption.
There was research out, was it this week or last week, about how children as young as 3 are on social media and using smartphones.
Yep.
And I think the percent, what percent was it of 5 to 7-year-olds? Something like 40%, which was I mean, I argue that adults shouldn't be on social media like that, let alone, you know, vulnerable kids whose minds are like sponges.
Yep. Absolutely. There needs to be boundaries in place. And this is one area the parents always ask is how do we boundaries the use of social media? Because it does affect you. And like you said, Ben, we're adults. I could be like in my bed, just want to watch one puppy video. And then later, 2 hours later, I'm still watching puppy videos.
I think they call it doom scrolling, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, but definitely the social media has a lot of influence on the young people. But then again, it's coming to educate your young person, you know, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, what the boundaries are, how do you stay safe and be inspired by those who inspire you and, you know, avoid those, like...
Yes, if social media was another addictive product, if it was an addictive substance, you know, you would not allow children to have it. But for some reason, social media is socially acceptable.
Well, there's a reason all the social media bosses, Mark Zuckerberg and someone, don't let their kids on their own product. It's because it's toxic to their brain.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.
Really great to speak to you.